I see Lululemon as a financing partner, and because I've got this partner, they've taken away the pain of worrying about cash flow. Then you can focus on what you really need to do. I would recommend Lululemon at any point in time.
Dex Prepare. Make bookkeeping more profitable. Prepare your accounts automatically. Hours saving software to automatically fetch all your business data into one single view. Connect to over 1,400 suppliers to automatically fetch invoices, statements and bills. Dex Prepare.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining and welcome to the second webinar in our Business Finance Bootcamp series. I'm Tom Stewart, Chief Marketing Officer at Lululemon, and on behalf of everyone at Lululemon and OnlineX, I'd like to welcome you. At Lululemon, we've made it our mission to do everything we possibly can to help South African SMEs grow and prosper. And that's why we're so excited to be a part of the Business Finance Bootcamp, which is really designed to bring you tons of valuable information to help you improve the financial health of your business. Today's topic is incredibly important for any kind of business, and that's cash flow management. And once again, we've got a great range of speakers lined up, ready to cover a range of topics from how to build a world-class cash flow strategy through to the technology you need to be considering to help manage your cash flow in real time. So I'll now hand over to today's host, Willem from Go-Getters Accounting, to get us started. Willem, over to you.
Tom, good afternoon, and thank you very much for the introduction. I'm super pleased to be here today. When somebody mentions cash flow, especially within a business setting, I can't help but think of the flight I undertook a couple of weeks ago for the first time since the beginning of lockdown. I was flying with Lyft, aptly, and that beautiful feeling that you get when you sit in your seat and the plane starts to move forward, you start to feel the G-force pushing you back in your seat. And at that critical moment when the nose lifts off the ground and the aeronautical science starts to take over, and all of a sudden you gain altitude very quickly. That feeling of the lift is how I think about cash flow, to a business. And so I agree with Tom, it's a super important topic to talk about. One of my partners keeps on reminding me that the key to keeping your business afloat is three things. Number one is cash, number two is cash, and number three is cash. So we've all heard it before, cash is king. And I believe that every business owner deserves to be free, having sufficient cash so that they can make the best possible decisions for the future of their business. And so I'm super, super excited to introduce you guys to my two partners in business, or in industry, shall I say, my colleagues in industry. Waldek Vazovic from PKF and Simon Magner from Iridium Business Solutions. Thank you guys for joining me. How are you guys doing today?
Thanks, Willem. Appreciate the welcome.
Awesome. Yeah. Simon, let's start with you if you don't mind. We've got a jam-packed program and we want to make enough time for questions at the end. So would you mind just giving us a brief intro to you, your business, how you help your clients solve problems, and very specifically, what do you see as the main challenges from a cash flow perspective? And then once you're done, Waldek, I'll ask you the same question.
Cool, thanks, Willem. So I'm the founder of Iridium Business Solutions. I run the business with my brother, and we're 100% in the cloud accounting business that tries to take over the financial management for SMEs and provide them with solutions to run their businesses. Most people start a business because they're passionate about what they're doing. They don't necessarily get excited about the finances. That's why they got people like ourselves who get excited about making sense of numbers. And we really have a passion for making numbers easy to understand for small business owners. The last year has taught us that the more you apply your mind to the business and get to really understand what drives your business, the better you can actually control and run it going forward. So don't be scared of your finances. Get to know what questions you need to ask your accountant to run it better.
Awesome, thanks. And if you don't mind, Simon, if you look at any business and what you see in the marketplace, what would you say is the top reason businesses get trapped from a cash flow perspective?
they lose sight of how quickly they can turn something into cash in their bank, and they focus on the fact that they've made a sale or they've done a good decision, but they make those decisions in isolation to the cash flow impacts of it. So stocking up your retail stock with a whole lot of expensive bicycles, as one of my clients recently did, and having no cash to pay their payroll at the end of the month, that's not a good decision. But making sure they know what stock you can hold, what cash you need to hold, and realizing that everything happens kind of together. You can't make isolated decisions. I think when you make those decisions carefully, considering multiple things, then it works. And you need to know what the multiple things to consider that are relevant. So when you plan carefully and you think about the things that are relevant, you get to make good decisions, and you build that barrier of safety so you don't run out of cash or get to panic moments where you have to make bad decisions because you've got yourself in that corner.
Awesome. Thanks very much. Waldek, over to you.
Cool, man. Thanks, Willem. And yeah, welcome everyone, guys. I'm the managing partner of PKF Octagon, which is the Joburg office of PKF. But I think more importantly, especially for this discussion, I'm one of the founding partners of PKF Ignite, which is our cloud accounting business solution for our SME market. And I think in a similar way, we really felt that we wanted to bring finances to the limelight from the back office, because traditionally your books and records were housed in, somewhere in a dirty old office, where no one wanted to see them. And we felt that maybe they're a little bit more important, and we should try and get our business owners to try and look at them more than once a year. So I think for my sins as well, as you say, and Simon, I disagree with you. I think having a room full of bicycles is not a bad idea. But, for one of my passion projects, I'm also a partner in a cycling agency business. So I think I firsthand have also lived through the COVID drama of what we've had in terms of supply chain issues and COVID shortages and all the lockdowns as well. And then I think, Willem, in terms of, maybe the same question that you asked Simon, I think there's two elements. I think Simon made a great point around, the looking at the balance sheet side of things as well, not just saying, well, I've done the sale and I can go crazy. And I think maybe it ties into it. I think many times we think that our new best month is the new reality. And I think that many times we forget that things can come off their peak. And so many times I find that businesses, when they hit a new threshold, they think that's the new sustainable, and that's the new forever revenue number. And many times, you might find that you're actually riding a wave for 3 or 4 months, or the industry is, that wave might come off. But then we're very quick in our own businesses to always then bulk up our overheads to reflect that new reality. But then when it comes off, you find that a lot of guys got caught with the pants down a little bit, and to change overhead structures, sometimes a little bit more tricky than, because if you enter into long-term SLAs, etc., you become trapped a little bit.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for that. I mean, Simon, I think you touched on a very important point there in terms of planning. And I would like for us to, in a few minutes, explore a little bit on that side and what one can do to get that planning aspect right. Before we get there, I want to pick up on your point on the overheads, Waldek. And that's something I'm really passionate about, because, it's easy to talk about cash, and cash is king, and you have to have cash. But, I don't believe somebody can talk about cash unless you are also making profits. And, that's the question I very often get from my clients is, my income statement shows that I've got a profit, but why can't I see the cash? What are your guys' thoughts on that? Do you hear the same thing from your clients?
I think that's probably one of the most common questions that gets asked, and whether that's actually, I think, agnostic to business size. And you find that whether it's a big or small business, the magic lies in that cash flow statement. That is such an underutilized document. It's what's happened to my money. I've made millions of rands, but it's never showing in my bank account, or and all you guys are telling me is that I've made money, but I've made nothing. So definitely, I think the role that we maybe play, and that we should play, in terms of maybe running through with our clients, as to the difference between paper profit and cash money, and where the difference lies, I think is a vital one.
But Simon, you picked up on it as well, right? I mean, it's one thing that we make a profit, And you talked about the quality of decisions that business owners sometimes make without thinking of the cash flow consequences. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, 100%. Well, I actually, I'll tell you a story about a client that I spoke to a year or so ago. We were getting to late February and it was time to do provisional tax. And I sent him an email, probably the 15th of Feb. And I said, hey, you're in for 100,000 Rand provisional tax at the end of the month. You've got to line it up. And he said, but Simon, this must be wrong. There's no money in my bank. I couldn't have made a profit. And he couldn't distinguish between a income statement profit, which results in a provisional tax payment required, and money in the bank. And I think too often small business owners don't understand enough about finances to try and run their business and anything other than, like Valdek mentioned, the income statement. If the income statement said I've made a profit, I'm doing well. If there's cash in the bank, I'm doing well. And I think understanding the fundamentals of a balance sheet without becoming an accountant is really important. So I think our role as accountants, and I think a lot of the tools that are out there at the moment are helping us do this, is to almost make accounting simpler. And it's one of those things that accountants like to hold on to, because when it becomes a black box, then you pay me more for my services because you don't know what goes on. But actually our job is to make it simpler and get people to understand that we're there to simplify their life. So finances should be easier. And when you really understand what drives your business and how you take a sale into money in your bank, that's what really makes a business tick. And I love doing it in my own business when I get to the kind of point in the month going, where's my money? And then I start seeing money coming in, and then I go, cool, I want to get to X number by this date, because then I know I'm in a good space. And as much as, people think, business owners don't, are not risk averse, and they just kind of go for it. I'm an accountant, but I'm actually a risk taker. I take a lot of risks, but I actually like having buffers that make me feel I'm not under pressure. So the more cash flow I can build into my business, and the more like gap I get between the cash that I need and the cash that I have, the less stress I have. And I actually hate micromanaging my cash. So, it makes me feel a lot happier when I've got like a 300,000-400,000 Rand buffer at the end of the month. Then I can actually sit back and I'll make better decisions.
Yeah, go for it, Wally.
Sorry, Simon. So as you say, man, I think what ends up happening is when you're under cash flow pressure, and we might get to it later as well, you operate under this constant stress level. So you're not actually running your business properly. You're worrying about collecting every rand and cent. And I think, as you say, that buffer allows you the benefit of working strategically on your business and working your business and not you working in your business, and I think that we've all had those months, especially with COVID last year. I mean, I think every industry experienced that period where there was a shortfall somewhere. Some clients didn't pay, someone was, battling, or your output wasn't sufficient, or we didn't sell enough goods, where you had that crunch and you go, oh my God. And then for those 2 or 3 weeks, kind of all your bigger dreams and strategic objectives fly out the window. You're just like in panic mode. And it's not a healthy place to be from a chronic perspective, right? Maybe it's okay for a month end or two, but not every single month.
And I think that also talks to the role of a business leader. As a business leader, we shouldn't be getting stuck into the nuts and bolts. We should be thinking 6 and 12 months down the line. And when I get sucked into the day-to-day running of my business and dealing with has this client paid? Why haven't we paid this bill? And I'm getting emails from someone, hey, you haven't settled this. It completely takes my focus off what we should be doing. It actually, I don't see the impact just this month. I see it in 6 months' time, because I wasn't strategic about planning, and I didn't make the right decision if I'm in a stock business to order stock from China, which I know takes 4 months to get here. So all those decisions get hampered, and I really just set up myself up for failure in the future.
I want to for a moment return to my example of the airplane, and when you spoke about the buffer, that you don't have to micromanage your cash a few minutes ago. I thought back of my return flight from Joburg to Cape Town, where the takeoff was awesome, and the entire flight, as soon as we got to cruising altitude, was there were no bumps. It was super smooth. It was just lacquer, if I can be as blunt as that. When I flew from Cape Town to Joburg, there was quite a lot of turbulence. And so when I think of that turbulence, I'm thinking of that necessity of having to micromanage my cash when I know I don't have that buffer in place. So I would see if we can find a way to make it super practical for the people, listening to us today. If, let's say, somebody is in that cash trap at the moment, like, can we think about a couple of practical ideas, things that they can start to think about? Where should they begin? I mean, I mentioned cash is cool, but you can't talk about cash until you have profit. How do we fix it? What are the best things we can advise people to do?
I mean, I can give one or two things, and I'm sure the rest of you guys can share as well. When we got into COVID times last year, and I was looking at cash in our bank, we were getting emails from some of our clients going, I can't afford to pay you for the next couple of months. Or people were asking for discounts or deferrals. So we suddenly saw the revenue coming in drop significantly and the cash coming in drop. And I realized we were going to have a gap. So as soon as we realized there was a problem in terms of what was coming in was not going to exceed what was going out, we looked at all the avenues to increase my cash in hand. So we reached out to each of our suppliers and we said, can you guys help me out? I'm getting pushed on this side for customers asking for a deferral. Can you guys give me either a discount, which means I don't have to pay you that money ever again, or can you give me a deferral, which means you don't charge me or expect to get paid for a few months and we pick it up later on when I hope life is better. So that kind of push it out and wait for a better time. So those were what I did. And then I went to all the different expenses that I was paying for. And I said, how do I drop those expenses if I don't need them? So asking those tough decisions. Do I really need 10 licenses of Adobe? Do I need to pay for that professional license of Zoom, or can I go to a free version? And making all those little decisions, that you don't want to make them every month, but it was okay to make them at that point. And that made a significant impact. Ask your landlord for a deferral. So all those were supplier things. I think those were our kind of key things. Take in the drop in income, but push back on the supplier side to get better terms and time.
Father, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that, also one of the human reactions is always to look, in the mirror when things go well. So it's, well, we've done well, but when things go badly, to look at it through the window and blame everyone else. And I think that Simon's touching on a good point, is that many times when we're not making money, it's easy to blame COVID or to blame your customers not paying you or your suppliers. But I think it's about actually looking within your business first. Let's start there. And as Simon said, kind of, how do you eat an elephant? It's a chunk at a bite at a time, is look at everything, because there's not going to be one area usually where you're going to have the magic pill. So it's probably going to become a series of small incremental gains that you can get. And I think one thing COVID has shown to a lot of our business clients, and even to ourselves, is that sometimes by being a little bit prudent and cutting the overheads, I think many companies have gone through COVID with actually better than expected numbers, because they've realized that they can achieve the same output with lesser input. So I think we must also become wary of, as you said, Simon, we haphazardly sometimes sign those SLAs. And I think now with many platforms and solutions, it's easy to sign another recurring billings, service that you want, or this cool app that you want. But are you really using it? Are you getting the best out of your people? And I think that's, for me, been one of the benefits of COVID. It's forced us to really look at our businesses and do it chunk by chunk. And I mean, we're going to get to it as well. I think another one is, as Simon said, is maybe renegotiating those terms, because sometimes people just slide and use, we allow people to slide. And I think COVID has been a period of resetting those credit terms. And I think the last one is pricing, right? Which we're going to touch on, is the fact that, you very many times and especially as accountants, we also tend to look at price, costs, overheads over anything, right? But we never look at our pricing to say, is that item that I'm selling at the right price, given the new set of circumstances? And I think sometimes, and the first point talks about turnover being vanity. We just want to do turnover because it gives us that comfort. It's like that warm, fuzzy feeling in your stomach. But if you're not really making that turnover profitable, what are you really achieving, right?
We've got a couple of nice questions coming here already, and I just want to assure everybody we're going to make time to get to all of them at the end. But I want to pick up on the points just made. I mean, we heard about negotiating better terms with suppliers, managing overheads. That's come more, through more than once, and pricing. And so, when I think of it, the picture that starts to emerge, if we were to reverse engineer this question about cash flow, is you can't have cash unless you've got profit. And of course, profit only happens once your income is more than your expenses. And so I think the point on the pricing talks to the income. But the income is not just the pricing. And there I want to pick up back on your point earlier, Simon, is the quality of decisions. Sometimes we tend to make decisions, whether it's pricing, whether it's additional sales, whether it's purchases, that may not always be in the best interest of the business. And so perhaps as a suggestion that I can throw out there to the community listening today is to say, well, when last did you take a long and a hard look at your pricing? How do you price for your services? And when you price and you sell at that price, did you take all your costs into consideration? Because when you sell, when it's a sale, it's like a spent arrow. You can't go back and go to the customer and say, well, sorry, I charged you the wrong price. It just doesn't work that way. And so you want to make sure that your sales is done at the right price, so that once it happens, there's margin sufficient to cover the overheads. So I wonder if you guys want to maybe help me in unpacking this whole issue around pricing. What are some good ideas we can share with the community?
It's actually a great area to talk around pricing. And I think it's one of those areas that when you start out your own business, it's probably the biggest thing you need to solve is what is the right price for what I do. The default setting most of us take is what does everyone else charge? And I don't think that's the right answer. I think you need to know what are you offering, and in order to deliver a level of service at the point you want to deliver, with the right number of clients, the right number of people, I need to sell it for X. So I think a good starting point is actually to say, I need to have one accountant as an example for every 10 customers. That accountant costs, 30, let's pretend the number's 30,000 Rand a month or 32,000 Rand a month. That means their hourly rate is 200 Rand an hour to cover their costs. But they can't be busy 100% of the time, maybe only 75% of the time or 70% of the time, but you got to do some admin and some planning and a few other things. So now that number goes up to maybe 300 Rand an hour, which means in order to break even on that staff member, that's what I need to do. So if I'm now selling them out to someone on a job, and I know the job is only going to bring in 200 Rand an hour, that's a very poor decision to do that. So now I'm working out what does it actually cost, to the whole point of what does it cost to deliver an hour of my time, and what are all the costs involved in it, and don't overcomplicate it, but think about what the numbers are. And when we did that in our business, the first year or two, I was way under costing everything. I was charging people a fee because I thought that's all they wanted to pay. And I thought that was going to get the business over the line. And what was happening is everyone was signing up. Every person I put a proposal in front of, they said, I'm in. And I thought that made me a great business owner. But what I realized in retrospect is I was a bad business owner, because when people accept your offer on the first kind of proposal and 100% of people accept it, it means I'm too cheap. And people don't value me for that. But when I start getting a number of people saying no, it means that I'm testing that price point. And I think that the goal of a business owner is to test the price point to the right level that you get a certain percentage of people saying, I don't want to pay for that because I think you're too expensive. And much like when I sold my house, what is the right price to sell your house? The price that someone wants to pay for it. So you need to test the market, put it out like the estate agent who always highballs it a bit, get the right price point where people say no, yes. And when you're selling it consistently at a price point that enough people are happy with, that's your happy price point. And at your life cycle of your business, you continue to test that. It's never a stopping point. It's always testing it and retesting it and kind of working with that model.
Waldek, what would you advise your clients when they were to ask you about pricing related questions?
Yeah, you know what? I think that's, Simon, I think covered the services, aspect of it very well. I think if you're selling goods and most people tend to import, we do have a bit of local manufacturing. And I think it's, in fact, manufacturing is picking up at the moment, which is fantastic for our local industry. I think that many of our clients make the mistakes of not taking the full costs of bringing the goods into the country, and the local holding, stock holding, the negative cash flow cycle, holding costs, and then the distribution costs into account. So people will say, well, this item costs me, say, 28 Rand from China. Shipping is 5 Rand, so it's 29 Rand. I'll sell it for 45 bucks, I'm done. But what they forget is that it takes another truck to bring it into your warehouse. You've got to keep it on your books for 3 or 4 months. If you have taken out financing for that, you're paying interest on that facility. And then you got to take it to your customer, get it installed. So all these ancillary costs just build up. You have to keep insurance on that product. So usually what we find is that unless you're running a very accurate stock system, and there are many good ones at the moment, especially ones that tie into cloud systems, only when you do that exercise do people really realize the true cost of that good, to the point where it's sold. And so you get sometimes I find a very romanticized view of what your GP is to the reality. So in the head, sometimes you find a business owner says, I'll make 50% on the chair I've just sold. But then when we show him the full numbers, we say, by the time you pull all of this into your cost of sales, you're only making 12%. And then you're starting to realize why you don't have enough money for your overheads. So I think it's really looking at the entire cost of sales process and having and also I think during COVID, Willem, if you look at what's happened to the supply chains in terms of transport, the transport costs have gone through the roof. And I think also many of our clients haven't really adjusted pricing, but your input costs have gone up significantly. So from that point of view, something I sometimes find as well, business owners are slow to react to the input changes. And what they end up doing is it catches them out much later than what they were. Only once we kind of sit with them do they realize, shit, I've actually haven't made money on the last 3 orders.
Yeah. I actually love that, Willem, the talk around the GP and getting to the right GP, because I've had the discussion a few times, and one little trick I like to tell guys is when you know what your operational costs are and you've got an accurate GP, take your total OPEX and divide it by your GP, okay? Because that'll tell you the turnover you need to get every month to actually cover your costs. And when people do that number, they're often very scared because they start out realizing they've got a R500,000 OPEX, every month. And then when their GP actually comes out, not at 50 as they started, but at 20%, they suddenly realize they need to 5 times their OPEX in turnover to actually break even. So suddenly that turnover that they thought was okay at 1 million, now it needs to be 2.5 million rand to break even. And they go, oh no, I can't do that much. That's too big. And then you go, well, then you don't have a business, and I think that's an exceptionally difficult discussion to have with someone. Your model doesn't work. That the price point you're selling it at just won't work. And when you're in the service business, you can change your price point. Where you're in the product business and you're selling a semi-generic product, very hard to push your price up when another competitor is selling a similar-ish kind of product, because there's only so much you can change there.
Yeah, I'm super happy that you brought in the break-even aspect to this, because I was hoping we're going to get there. And I mean, that picture you've just created in terms of that difficult discussion is a very important discussion to have, because I think that's where people go wrong. I mean, I had a discussion with the client a couple of years ago where he said to me, well, I'm selling the goods at a markup of 25%, but I'm not making profit. And what's going on? And I said to him, well, who's doing the installation of these things that you're selling? And he said, well, I am. And I said, well, are you drawing a salary from the business? He says, yes, I am. So I said, how is that salary priced into what you tell the customer? And we discovered he doesn't even cost himself into the process. So there was not only a beautiful fusion of that, exact science of working out the correct price, but there was also a human science involved in understanding that there's some sweat that goes into delivering the product. But it's also a good opportunity to go back to an earlier point of saying, well, when we look at our overheads that we need to at least cover, but we want to cover, multiple times so we can make profit, are we carrying overheads that are fit for purpose? So, the idea that we have to constantly look at the overheads we carry, and there's an irony in it, right? You have to spend overheads in order to create the scale or the platform for you to be selling at certain volume. So there's constantly this balance between how much overheads is enough or too much, given what I'm able to deliver to the market.
Mm.
No,
I think
that's-
COVID has shown us, though, that, as I said earlier, that very few clients have come back and said we didn't have enough people, when they went through the exercise, or enough overheads. I think most clients found they had fat. So as you say, Willem, I always find sometimes when we deal with larger clients, they're a little bit more ruthless and analytical in decision making. And look, the beauty of small business is that you're not just doing business to make money, but there's also heart in it. But sometimes I think small business owners are a little bit too emotional to cut overheads. Even if it's an SLA agreement with an IT guy, they say, well, I've known the guy for 20 years. I can't just reduce my SLA with him. So I think many times I find that almost small businesses locally where almost sometimes to their own detriment, the business owners would not cut the overheads because they're almost too soft. And sometimes you actually, unfortunately, you've got to be quite hard when you're running a business, and you got to take the emotional aspect out of it to some degree, because as you say, usually you find in small business, you have got those expenses that you could quite easily cut and still make it through the month without any damage to your top line and income generation structures, right?
Well, the only emotions that are allowed in that decision is when they look at the SLAs with their outsourced accountants. They're never allowed to cut that, of course.
For sure. Willem, we actually touched on a small point there as well. That kind of concept of fixed and variable costs, that you kind of study at university, but I think we intellectualize them. We don't practically understand them, and kind of, it's almost like a game of chess or playing kind of a thing. What can I change in the short term? What can't I change in the short term? And I think as the owner of a business or a leader in a business, you need to know what pieces you can move and how quickly can you move them. And I think when you get into a position of stress or kind of, cash flow challenge, and you don't know what positions you can move and how you can move them, I think that's when things go wrong. And I know in our business, if I know that I've got the ability to take on a contractor to pick up extra work, and that allows me to generate more revenue, that's a great decision. So, even if that contract is expensive, so if I outsource to another party to consult on something, and that party charges 50,000 Rand for that consult, but I can bill at 100K, I mustn't look at the opportunity lost. I should have hired a guy. That the reality is I made a profit. So I think you always need to look at situational things, and often what we do is that we go, I should have hired another guy, and to Waldek's point earlier, when the times are good, we start scaling up, to build up this big infrastructure. And that actually just hampers the ability to make good decisions in the future. And it over kind of, complicates our business. And I think the agility that a lot of people have built into their businesses as a small business owner is the reason why they can be great at what they do. And I've learned to be okay with the fact that I sometimes can't take on certain projects when they come along because I don't have capacity. And it's okay to tell people I'm actually at my target for the year. We're on track. My goal was this, and that talks to having a budget. So when I have a budget, I know where I'm trying to get to. When something comes up, which sounds amazing on the surface, but actually I'm going to overcapitalize in the short term and feel the pain in a few months' time, I need to be okay to go give Willem a call. He'll probably help you and not do the work myself. But it's a really hard thing to do, to say no to money. Hey, we as business owners, when someone says, "Can I pay you money?" we just put our hands up and say yes, without actually thinking.
Yeah.
Let's change gears a bit because I want to make sure we get to some of the questions. So let's assume the business owner's got the pricing right. The sales are at the right level. The margin makes sense. It covers the overheads multiple times over, which means well-deserved profit for the owner after paying all the salaries, right? Who wouldn't want to have that? So let's assume that's all in place. Let's talk about this budget issue and forecasts. What can we share with the audience in terms of practical tips that will help them build up the cash flow so they need not micromanage it on a day-to-day basis?
So I think that from a budget perspective, many times again, a budget is seen to be something that, big companies use just to have like a teacher, that looks over you to say how much you've spent, and to wield a stick where the accountant will say you've overspent on entertainment, on travel. But I think that a lot of small businesses tend to grow as well. And I think one of the benefits of having a budget and turning that into some type of a cash flow forecast as well is that growth takes money. And if you are going to grow your business, so it's not just budgeting to make sure that you get to your target number, but I think many businesses grow very quickly, and that growth puts stress on them, because every time you're growing, as we spoke, you need to balance your overhead structure with your turnover. If you're a goods importer, you're bringing goods in, and that creates a negative cash flow cycle. You've got to stock up for your fantastic Woolies contract that you have to sell cosmetics to them, and that just eats your cash flow. So I think many times when we sit with our clients and look at the budget, yes, you want to establish some type of control measures, but secondly, it's to say, guys, if we're going to grow, how much can we grow by without overstressing the business? Because if you go too quickly, you're going to run out of cash, because that cash is going to be tied up in the balance sheet side that no one looks at. It's going to be tied up in stock, in debtors, in financing, etc., etc. So you find, for me, that it's a critical from both sides. And when things go well, we tend to leave the budget and put it aside. But for me, that's when you actually need to start looking at it even more.
That's actually great. And I can actually talk to the scaling challenge. We had that this year. We kind of ran out of space in our office at the end of last year. So we went to our landlord and we took on more space. The exact counter opposite to what everyone was advising in all the online articles. Work from home, don't take space. We said, we're in the people services business. We need to have space. And if anything, we need more space now. So we went from about 180 square meters to 500 square meters of office space. And we took over some space that was just not well set up for us. So I had to spend money to get that space ready, for the usage. My capital expenditure, which is one of the things we often leave out of our budgets. Our budget shows our revenue and our costs and our OPEX. We leave out capital expenditure. So when I looked at it, I had this big CapEx, for all the space I was doing. My rental went up, pretty quickly. And I had to employ another 10 or 15 people to handle the future growth. All those people needed a new computer. You go and buy a new computer. I don't like buying the cheapest one, because then those computers don't work well. So then you're spending 12, 15, 20,000 Rand a computer. So now you're at 200,000-300,000 Rands worth of computers. And now you're going to have new software products. Suddenly this whole fit out thing wasn't a 100,000 Rand expense. It suddenly becomes 500,000 Rand or 750,000 Rand, and how often do we factor that into our growth? And I think that talks to Waldek's point. You can't just keep scaling, and as you keep scaling, you get to these like tiers, so your business model gets to a point where you need to hire another person to answer the phone, and you need another person to do the admin and another person to help. When your business is built around revenue generating people and everyone makes money, it's a simple model, but as soon as you get to a certain size, you need non-revenue generating people to get stuff done. And if you don't have those people, you drop the ball, and clients phone you up and say, I'm going to a new person because you didn't do a good job, and I think that talks to almost the life cycle and growth of any business. So I know we've got some people who ask questions, I'm in the high-end business or I'm in the low-end product business. Every business has a model that works for that business at whatever scale you're at. And I had a client once who ran a restaurant, and he wanted to pay himself a big salary as the owner of the restaurant. And I said, but you can't, your business doesn't make enough money. And he said, no, but we can have 10 restaurants one day. And I said, yes, but you're paying yourself today based on the 10 restaurants, salary that you can afford. So I think you need to understand, what can I take out as an owner, and what does that model look like, and almost build it out over a few years to where I'm going to get to, and then stick to your speed.
And I think maybe, Simon, to that point as well, is that when you're planning for growth, you need to then also ensure that if you can see in your model, and this is where your good business advisor should help you with this, if you can see in your numbers that you're going to be short of cash at some point, because, to do that big contract, you need to bring the stock in, or you've got to bring those extra people or computers. That's when you've got to go out and either find money and I mean, we all know that finding another partner in a business is probably the most expensive way of finding money. So you'd rather turn to bankers, or you'd rather go and find, a company like Lulalend to lend you money. But I think as well, many times people only look for cash when it's a little bit too late. So I think the point of budgeting as well is that when you identify those stress moments, you can now start planning for them and open up those relationships with bankers or fintech providers and lenders, so that from that perspective, you're ready. And it's you've got kind of, as a business owner, in my mind, you should sometimes, shouldn't just be walking through the forest. You want to climb up to the top of the tree and see where you're going and plan for that route and ensure that you've got these strategic partnerships that you can then just tap into them as you need them. And I find many of our clients as well, only when it's like, 25th hour, they start panicking, and then it's almost too late to get a good deal. And they end up getting very, maybe, very expensive financing, or they end up getting the wrong type of financing for the business needs that they have, because they're running to the first person that will give them money, not to the best person.
That's a very important point. And just as a reminder to everybody watching, next week's session is going to be on funding. So if you haven't done so already, I would highly encourage you all to register for next week's session, where we're going to delve a bit deeper into this whole point of how to get funding for your business at a cost-effective, fit-for-purpose cost level. But speaking about being able to see ahead of time, and that's in my mind what a budget or a cash flow forecast is all about. And again, I would love to lean into my aeroplane analogy. As the captain of that plane taking off, he's got a clear runway ahead of him or her. And it's important that they know exactly how long that runway is, because there is a critical point towards the end of that runway, which if they do not commit for the takeoff, is going to spell disaster. Either they're going to take off and they won't be able to commit and they're going to crash, or they're going to overshoot the runway. And again, I believe that no business owner deserves to be in that position. And for me, that's probably the most important reason why I want to have a cash flow forecast. I want to know exactly what my cash flow runway is. How many months do I have available where I can trade without having to make any changes? And that's what I find is key. So from a practical perspective, maybe Simon, again, starting with you, what are some of the tools or tips that you can share in how to come up with that runway, or in the most efficient manner?
Sure. I think there's no one silver bullet that's going to solve this for everyone. So I think, it's great to listen in on these kind of discussions and hear what other people's thoughts are. There's not one thing that always works. And I think there's different answers for different times of your business. I think for us, doing projects always brings in quick revenue for us. Because when I do a project, I charge someone an upfront fee, and then I get the rest of the fee later on. In a month or two. And often projects is quite an intense type of work as an accountant. We're doing, 3 years of this, plus this, and we really get sucked in, and we can kind of generate some revenue. So in the service business, that's great. But what does happen though is that person who gets sucked in there doesn't get to take on any new monthly clients, that they don't get to go and do quality control checks on other things. So you almost give up their time, on other areas. So I think we've realized sometimes when we're in a tighter spot, how do I build a little bit more buffer? I take on more project work, but I'm willing to accept that it's going to have an impact on my key people, because who are the best people to do the project work? The best people in your team, because the best people in your team make the best decisions in a services game. So how do I make more money in a product game? I discount things, and I go and do like a one-day only type approach. And I sell them on Take a Lot, and I drop them by 30%. So great idea in the short term, and I get to sell a few more things, but I'm almost cannibalizing what happens the next month, because now everyone's stocked up and I've undersold things, So I think you've always got to understand that turning things into cash can be done. If I tell my customers, if you settle your bill today, I'll give you a 10% discount, they all pay. They're happy to take it. If I go and sell my debtors book, I can go and sell my debtors book to a funder, and they'll buy them my debtors book, and they'll give me the money tomorrow, but what they will do is they'll take 5% off it. So I think there's always these opportunities to give up something, but you're always going to give up. there's always a cost. Nothing comes for free, you know. So I think it's nice to know what options you have, and it's good to play around with these options, but just realize that if you do one thing, there is an impact. And if you don't know what the impact is, you need to do a bit of research to understand what it actually does.
That's awesome. That's great insight. Thanks for that. Waldek, I'm going to start with you. I want us to delve into some of those questions.
Yeah, I saw them popping up. They look good, some of them. I hope we can answer them. Yeah.
Yeah, let's. I'm going to just scroll up very quickly to the top. I hope I'm at the top. Let's see. Kelly Bogile asked, how would you know when your business is in the red? How do I know that it is time for me to raise additional funds for the company?
I think, Kelly Bogile, I think it'll be good to understand, you know, what in terms of your business is. Are you finding that you are having stress because of growth or because your turnover going down? You know, for me, I think the simple thing is what Simon said is, if you're getting to month end and you're betting to pay your overheads, you know you've got a problem. You know, when you're stressing about it, you know you have a problem. And the problem can be either because you're growing too quickly and all the money's tied up in stock and debtors, or in unbilled amounts or unclaimed amounts, or it's because you're simply not making enough to cover your overheads. So I think for me, you know, one of the biggest challenges with business owners is that many times it's an emotional decision to really know that there's a problem in your business. So rather take action sooner than later, you know, and you know, I'm happy as well if you want to chat after this, you know, to leave my email behind, because I think we really need to understand what's happening in your business that you're seeming to run out of cash. But my view is, if you are having sleepless nights and you're betting to pay your month end, you know you're having problems.
I want to emphasize the point that came through in my mind is that as a business owner, you need not stand on your own 2 feet. There's lots of people out there like Waldek, like Simon and their businesses that can actually walk that road with you. And that's why it's always a good idea to surround yourself with the best people that can help you deriving those kind of insights from the information from your business. Let's go for the next question. Matata asked, is cash more important than profit? Simon, that sounds like your question.
Thanks a lot, Willem. Yes and no. And the reason why it's yes and no is it doesn't help having a small business with lots of cash in the bank that doesn't generate a profit. So cash in the hand sometimes means you were too scared to make the right decisions. And if you're running a retail shop and you don't have stock and you run out, but you're sitting with money in the bank, that means you missed out on opportunities. So I think cash is always important to have to make the right decisions, but you shouldn't be having more cash and sacrificing profit. So you kind of want to have the right balance between the two. So if you're having a consistently profitable business, in order to maintain that and keep growing, you need to keep having cash available to sustain the business as it needs it. But I would be very happy to have a manageable but tight cash flow plan that was consistently profitable, because then it means I'm building the right business.
And I think if I may add to that, as a business owner, one of your key objectives should be to plan for the long-term survival of your business. And one of the aspects thereof is to plan for an exit. Now, by that I mean you either want to bequeath what you've built as a legacy to your family, or maybe you want to sell and go and live off the cash at some exotic island. Either way, there will only be a legacy if your business is able to generate positive cash flows. And one of the things I like to live by, especially in my own business, is profit comes first. So it's for me almost a mutually inclusive, concept that I can't talk about cash unless I've got profit. But at the end of the day, if there's no cash, there's no business. So very, very important to always put that at the front of your mind. Let's look at, good afternoon, Cor. Nice to have you on the call today. Thank you so much for joining. Your question, would you say a solution might be to close your business sooner rather than later? And have you ever had to give someone this advice? Wow, tough question. Who would like to answer that one?
I've had to actually have that discussion a few times. I like to think that I'm kind of direct when we communicate with people, and we have that kind of radical candor with our clients sometimes. I've told some people that I don't think you should be running your business. I've seen you run it for a period of time. I said, I've been your accountant for a couple of years. I don't think this business is going to work with its current model and the way that's being run. And what I've normally done in that situation, I've actually said to them, you should close your business down. And I've offered them solutions of how to close it down. And if people go, no, you're wrong, what we've normally then done is we've actually withdrawn our services a month or two after that. Because I don't think it's correct as an accountant to keep advising someone when actually they're not willing to hear your advice. If you're paying me to tell you what to do and how to run your business better, and you're not listening to me, that this is the right time to close it down, then I'm probably not the right person to keep working with you. And I've also failed as an accountant because I should have taught you, the right way to do things. And it should have been completely clear to you after getting my management reports for the last 10 months that your business doesn't work. So we've made a budget. You can't reach your budget ever, and your targets are never hit. Surely you've got to go, I've tried, I'm not giving up, but this didn't work. I'm moving on.
Well, that's hard hitting, but I think it's very much on point. And I think it's a lot of the times accountants perhaps do not step into that role that you've just described. So that's a good example for us. Thanks very much.
I think, Willem, I think as well, many times people see a business failing as a personal failure. And, I think the one thing we see with some of our good entrepreneurial clients is they're very quick to move on and pivot and adjust and try something new, because it's not a reflection on you and your ability as a person. Sometimes it's extraneous circumstances, or, technology changes on you, or the environment changes. I think, as you say, Simon, sometimes it's actually better to do it sooner, because many times we find that people then end up taking second bonds, putting more money into the business. So rather than addressing the structural, if you're never going to fix the structural business problem, you sooner or later, you're going to run out of that runway. You're just plowing more of your own cash into something that you could be using to seed a new business. So I do think that many times it's also a cognitive process with our clients. But I agree with Simon, is that, you have to have that discussion, but it's like a doctor telling someone that they need to go see a specialist, or that they need to maybe stop smoking, is that you've got to take that advice as well as a business owner. And it's not a reflection on you as a human being. And I think sometimes that, for me, is the hardest one to get over the line.
Well, that's a great point. And I must be honest with you, as a business owner in my own right, I've made many mistakes in my own business, and we still make mistakes on various fronts. And it's one of the hardest things to recover from psychologically. So I'm very glad that you threw it in there. I think it's real. And sometimes you just need to know when to cut your losses and move on and go and try something else. This is good stuff, man. Ashley is asking any suggestions for how to best alert customers to an imminent price adjustment. That's an interesting question. Any thoughts on that, gentlemen?
It really depends on what business you're in. I think every business has a slightly different thing. There's almost a South African culture that every year it should go up by 10%. That's kind of been our historical culture. It always goes up. And then then people start getting clever and they go, but I saw the CPIX report that came out. We were at 4%. So therefore, I'm only willing to pay you 4% more. And I think if you're arguing over, what's inflation, that's how I should be charging you. That's the wrong way of going down, the road. I think, like Waldeck said, certain products are foreign currency denominated and you're importing them. You need to look at what the exchange rates are doing. And if everyone's buying from the same type of places, there should be that consistent need to do it. I think the answer is no one likes a price increase. The quicker and more effectively you communicate it and give your reasoning and move on, the better you are. You're always going to find some people that get irritated and angry with you, and one or two people will drop off. But don't not do that because you're scared of the one or two people. The people that make comments on those notice boards and the people that complain are normally in the minority, and they don't always represent everyone. I saw a post on social media the other day. There was this bill, like a chalkboard outside a coffee shop, and it said, please try the cup of coffee that was given a 1 out of 10 on, this online rating site, kind of joking that, some people are going to complain about everything, but that's not the reality. It doesn't mean you close down. So I think tell them quickly, Ashley, give them your reasons and move on. And if they don't want to pay that price, they will move on, but there'll be someone else that'll come fill that space that's happy to pay that price.
Yeah, and I think as well, as you say, don't just link it to CPIX, link it to your business reasons. And also sometimes take a look structurally at your clients, or, if you're in a service game where where they've grown a lot or where your services have grown, and be sure not just to do a blanket, because sometimes you might have a way of increasing your price by a bigger margin if you have structurally, moved along with your client who's grown a lot, and your services have actually now grown to an extent where a structural increase is also required. I think many times as well, a lot of people are very alert of price increases in January. So I sometimes find that if technically some people find that when they do increases in May or June, you almost find that they seem to slide a little bit easier because everyone's on this kind of price increase witch hunt in January. So many times I find that when I even personally get an increase letter in May or June, I'm not as likely to complain as I am in January, because in January I'm like a wild dog looking not to approve any increases from any suppliers. So I think sometimes maybe also, I think linking it to events is better than just linking it to 1st of January. So yeah, if the rent dollar goes up, increase it at that time. Don't wait 6 months after the fact, and et cetera, et cetera.
But we have actually got two things that have worked really well for us, Willem. One of the things we did is we've got a tool that we use that allows us to see the volume of transactions going through our clients' accounts. And we can compare year on year. Like last year, you had 180 transactions in your bank. Now you've got 300, and your revenue's gone from X to Y. That's a kind of quantum growth. That's not just an annual price adjustment. And the second thing is, I love doing budgets for clients, and I don't have to charge them for the budget, because in the budget, I put my fee increase. So I have the discussion and I say, what does it look like for next year? And then I say, a great question to ask someone is, what would you like me to do for you next year? What would be important for you? These are all the services I can offer. Which ones would you like to take? And based on what you select, I will tell you what that service costs from our side. But then it's not just a blanket, I need to charge you more. It's what would you like me to do? And I've had some people come back to me and say, I don't want service A and B. And that saves me a ton of time, but I actually only have to drop my fee a small amount for that, drop in services. And suddenly I've freed up a whole lot of capacity with those team members to actually tackle much more valuable projects. So it's all about that time versus value thing that you need to get right. And I've got some clients that last year actually dropped their fees, and they're more profitable clients now because I spend 1 hour a month doing their work. But the output that they get is so much more valuable.
And this is a good reflection on an earlier discussion where you got to really have a proper handle on your costs before you know what to price it into the market. And if I may add more, I always like to then, once I've done that work, get back to the client and really get down and dirty in understanding what keeps them awake at night. Why are they coming to me in the first place? What is the value that I offer, and how am I instrumental in solving some of their key pain points? And a good example in my life, I love Netflix. I don't know about you guys. And so I promise you, if they come back to me next month with a price increase and they promise that the next edition of Better Call Saul is going to be released, I'll pay double what I'm paying now just to watch that. So they will understand what my pain points are. So I think it's always relative in terms of the value that you're able to deliver. We are unfortunately running out of time. I wonder if we can make time for one or two more questions. I see Themistocles, called himself out there on not including all the auxiliary costs. I promise you, we will not judge you, but feel free to reach out to us or any of us if you want us to talk through how to fix that going forward. Let's see. Shall we do one more question? Yeah, this is a good one. Christelle is asking, how does an entrepreneur work out their costs in order to pay themselves? Let's close with that.
Well, it's actually a great question, because I think that, the reason why you get into business, right, is to afford a certain lifestyle and to pay yourself. So I think, Christelle, unless I'm reading your question wrong, I think you've got to, first of all, have your own personal budget, right? You got to know what you need to live, and you have to be realistic about it. So if you're spending 50 grand a month living, you can't be drawing 20 grand a month out of your business, because you're still going to draw out of 30. You're going to put it on your loan account and you're going to pretend like you're only drawing 20, but you're actually taking 50. So I think you definitely need to have a personal budget. There are a number of great tools as well that you can actually download your bank statements into, and you can do a personal budget just to see what you need to live, and what you cost the company, and then to really assess also, like a mini business, whether that's a reasonable amount. Because let's say if that's coming up to 300,000 Rand a month, you might have to question yourself and say, what the hell am I doing? Because there's no way that a business can sustain this type of drawdown on a monthly basis. So I would just say simple principle, just run a personal record of what you've been spending for the last 3-4 months, and then convert that into a salary or, type of drawings, etc., that you need to draw out of your business.
Very important to include that in your overheads, so that once you do that calculation of what you must sell, that it's taken into account, so that you don't undersell yourself ultimately in the market. Gentlemen, sorry, we gotta wrap up, but this is a great afternoon. I'm sure we can carry on for much longer. Before we close, any final thoughts from you, Waldek? Let's start with you.
Yeah, I think, guys, that, many times I think business owners stay away from the financial side of things, and especially from budgeting and cash flows. And unfortunately, I think it's one of the duties of a business owner and I'm going to do a Simon now, I'm going to be direct, is one of the duties of a business owner is to get to know these things. And I think that you can't have that divorce. You got to get into your numbers. But at the same time, if you get a good financial partner and you're using the right modern tools, it's far more accessible than it's ever been. It's far easier. You can have dashboards. You can have an app. You can really get in just a dipstick on your business in 2 seconds without running through the traditional P&L. So my view is always try and partner with the right people. As entrepreneurs, we tend not to do that. And insist that you get value out of your providers. Getting your set of books 4 months after year end with looking at historicals is not what a modern day accountant should be giving you. And from that perspective, I think you should insist that in the same way, like you deliver value to your customers, that you get value out of your financial providers. So that will be my piece of advice.
Thanks very much. And thanks for joining us, Waldek.
Pleasure, man. It's been great. Thank you.
Simon.
Yeah, I think we've actually said a lot of great points. And I almost wish I had a person sitting next to me right now going, these are the 3 best things you said today. And then I could just go and put it all together like those professional presentation people do. But I think what Waldek actually spoke to now, you need to know the right questions to ask your partners and financial providers, and don't run away from the finances because you're scared. Take ownership of what's in front of you. The number of times I've had to tell a business owner that they failed in their previous accountant's management because they just assumed that they could, leave their previous accountant to be responsible, and their previous accountant didn't file half their returns and didn't submit to SARS. Ultimately, you start a business, you're the owner. Don't shirk your ownership, own it, and get the right partners in hand and know how to hold them accountable. So I try and tell my new clients when I take them on, these are the 5 ways to know that I'm doing a good job. Ask me for a tax clearance certificate. Make sure you get regular accounts. Ask me what the balance sheet numbers mean if you don't know. And if I can't give you a reasonable answer for something that makes sense to you, I'm probably hiding something. So know how to hold me accountable and you'll be a great business owner.
Simon, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. It was great chatting with you guys. And from my side, I'm going to end with a quote from Mike Mikulovic. And he said, transform your business from a cash-eating monster to a money-making machine. Have a great day, guys. And thanks for joining us. And we'll see you next week at the funding session. Cheers.
Ciao, guys.
Great. Thank you so much. The biggest challenge we face, like most of our clients and many other businesses out there, is number 1, access to cash. We connected with LulaLend. It was extremely easy to get approval, and the very next day, the cash was in the bank. I would recommend LulaLend because they just get it.
Dex Prepare. Make bookkeeping more profitable. Prepare your accounts automatically. Hours saving software to automatically fetch all your business data into one single view. Connect to over 1,400 suppliers to automatically fetch invoices, statements and bills. Dex Prepare.